Hi, everyone. This is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast for writers who are looking for their writing community. I know you want to find readers for your work, but I think your first step is to connect with other writers. That's what we're going to do here in the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We'll do writing prompts and other writing group activities, discover online writing communities, learn how to find local writing groups, or how to make your own. Join us as we explore, learn, and write. Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. A lot of the conversations in Stop Writing Alone, and in particular in the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers Club, have surrounded the art of storytelling, looking at story structure, finding our motivation and inspiration to get our writing done, doing things to make sure that we don't get slogged with writer's block, and how to really, build ourselves up against that sort of thing. And in essence, getting the words on the page, right? And, I think I've mentioned it before that in that community, there's a diversity of writing experience and writing levels. So, a lot of that is incredibly relevant, especially when you're a brand new writer. Just getting the words on the page is finding the confidence to do such a thing is a conversation that you really need over and over again. But since the community is now, over a year old, and many of the people that started in April of 2020 are still in the Happy Campers today, those conversations can still happen, do still happen, will happen forever. You can never talk enough about storytelling and story structure as you're drafting in fiction, right? But what happens when you're done with your draft and you're ready to send it either to a critique partner, or in many cases, a lot of the writers are getting ready and starting to submit work out into contests, into literary spaces, whatever they are, online magazines or print magazines. What happened in the past couple of weeks is that we started to talk about what are the things that you need to do before you press send. And there's two different conversations to have here. And one is the capital R revision. And that delves back into this conversation of, did you look at your story structure, and, what structure are you using? Are you looking at the 7-act structure? Are you following the hero's journey? Are you a fan of the 15 beats from Save the Cat? All of that stuff, right? Do each of your chapters have a purpose? Oh man, I'm blanking on all of the big questions that we could talk about in terms of our story itself. And I was finding, as we were talking about revision, we kept getting into these conversations, which again are all well and wonderful. But, and I take ownership of this. I think because I was really, I've been concerned for a long time about creating little voices in people's head that are going to put up blocks. The nuts and bolts of editing were sort of pushed to the side, because one of the things, and I put this up on the Stop Writing Alone Instagram this week on the Let's Talk Tuesday post. How do you deal with your inner voice? Your inner critic, I'm sorry. How do you deal with your inner critic? And everybody's got a different technique for that. But the thing that I love to do, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, is, I thank my inner critic for showing up whenever I'm trying to draft. But I tell her, now's not the time. I need you to step aside because I need to draft. And if you come in here and start telling me that's passive voice, or, oh, look at that, you used another adverb, I'm going to start to slow down and really nitpick over those things. And and miss the train of my story as it passes me by. So my technique for dealing with my inner voice is to say, thank you very much for all of that awesomeness, because I don't want passive voice at the end of the day, and I don't want a ton of adverbs all over the place or whatever it may be. Everything you're saying is right. I just don't want it right now. And so I've been sort of preaching this to the community. And now we're at the point where we're pressing send. And for me, that means I need to call the voice back. And right before I hit send, say, hey, remember all that stuff you were trying to tell me before and I didn't want to hear about? What was it? And, the voice could say to me, well, I don't know, let's read through the whole thing again and I'll tell you when I see it. And that's one technique of going through a vision and going line by line and looking for all that stuff. But the conversation that came up this week in Happy Campers is, does anybody have a cheat sheet or, a shorthand for sort of finding those sorts of things quickly, because we all know what they are. And what we ended up doing, well, it's not completed yet, but we had a discussion surrounding kind of crowdsourcing our own last minute revision cheat sheet of things we need to do right before we click send. And this is the find and search for different things that could potentially be a little highlight to something. One thing that we talk about is find the word was and seeing, is it necessary? I was walking to the store. All right, enough with that. I walked to the store, or ambled to the store, some more powerful verb, but I was walking is a little bit lazy, a little stretched out. There's tighter ways of saying these things. So one of those last minute things before I press send is search for all the was's and examine them. See if they really make sense. But I'm not going to list for you all the things that we came up with. For one, I don't have it all in front of me right now. But I did want to tell you the 3 things that I do before sending any words anywhere. These are my non-negotiables. If I'm running, tight on time, I really, I need to send this out. For example, we're doing weekly critique meetings in Happy Campers, and we do it every Thursday. I try to have Thursday night is the meeting that we share, but I try to have the work to the person no later than Monday night. So if it's Monday afternoon and I'm just barely picking the thing that I need to send to somebody, it's okay, what do I need to do before I click send? And these are going to seem like no-brainers, but sometimes we forget. And these things are the secret knock on the door between you and a submission, right? People are not going to want to see work that hasn't at least gone through some very basic stuff. And number one is spell check. Don't send your work anywhere if you haven't run spell check. And it sounds ridiculous to say, because you're of course I know, but we become blind to the mistakes that we are typing sometimes. We're so immersed into the story that sometimes you don't pick up something, or you know the story you want to tell, so you're reading it and you're knowing the words that are supposed to be there, and our minds do amazing things by filling in weird blanks that are left behind. So we are living in an age of incredible technology. Let it do the work for you. Any word processor you use is going to have some form of spell check. Run it through. Don't just blindly accept everything it gives you. If it's spell checking, well, first of all, it's not going to catch some words like the theirs or the here's or, that type of thing. But give it its moment and let it do its thing. And on that same note, hand in hand with spell check, is if you do have access to a program like Grammarly or Pro Writer Aid, run that through. Now, I haven't invested in either, but I am looking at Pro Writing Aid because I've been hearing a lot of talk that that is more helpful to writers of fiction. But once I make my decision and I get a look at it, I'll let you know how I feel. But there's a number of people in Happy Campers that use Pro Writing Aid and have loved it. So I guess I should just say step one is run the tech check. Like whatever your tech enables you to help out, let it do it. Don't trust it totally, completely. Make sure you also agree with whatever suggestions it has. And that's particularly, if you're running something like Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid where they're giving you suggestions, make sure it's not like totally off the mark of what you wanted. That's number one. And that's simple, right? Because it's embedded, it's already running. You paid for this. This is what you have it on your computer for. I'm just saying it out loud in case you've forgotten, because I've been in that boat where you have this cool tool, you have it there, and then you forget to use it half the time. But the number two thing that I will always, always do, and never, ever send anything out without doing, is reading it aloud. And I was talking about this with the group today. I was just saying what was so funny is in this past week, I took Tammy Brightweiser's Fabulous Flash Fiction course, which was fabulous. And she said she is going to run it again later in the summer. So keep your eye on her if that's something that you're interested in. And one of the things that we were doing is like every single day we were writing something. We had an assignment every single day. And so I was writing flash fiction pieces. And I would not post them or send them without reading them aloud. I think I did forget spell check now that I think about it because I was just writing so late. But I did read them aloud to my husband. And at least once, I don't know if it happened twice, but it definitely happened once where I was reading this story and there was just like words missing. And it's hilarious because I'm reading what I typed and I'm like, what? It's not like I was missing a the. I was missing like a meaty word. I guess sometimes your fingers move faster than your brain and it just jumps to the next thing. I'm not sure. But I would not have caught this if I didn't read aloud. And in tonight's discussion, when we were talking about all these last minute checks, and I asked the group, I was like, what is a problem that you run into in your own writing that you need like a check for? Does anybody have any questions? And one of the Happy Campers asked for like, what about tense? Is there like a thing I can search for tense? Is there a thing I can do? And I was like, well, that's a really great question because tense agreement sometimes will sway and it's a thing that I have to find. And I realized in that conversation, I said, the times that I find it is when I read my work aloud. Oftentimes, if I'm reading through quietly to myself, I'm just in it and I'm not really, it's not popping as much. But when I read aloud, particularly because I get more animated these days when I'm reading aloud, I think that's in one part due to I'm a podcaster now. So I'm aware of my voice and how I deliver things. But I think that was even preempted by having my son, who I began to read children's books aloud to and would do character voices and be very animated. So I've been in the practice of reading what's on the page and trying to deliver it on a level of like entertainment. So when I'm reading my own work aloud, I can't say that I go quite as crazy as I do when I'm reading Elephant and Piggy with my son, but I do at least really put myself in the space of the voice of what's written. And if something's being written in present tense, I do feel the immediacy of it. And so when a shift happens where it inevitably falls into past tense, because I don't think I've ever maintained present tense throughout a whole work yet, I feel it. I feel it as I'm reading aloud. I say, whoa, wait, we're not as immediate. And I may not realize it in the first sentence that I read aloud that's in the wrong tense, but at a certain point, I'm like, whoa, when did this happen? And then I realize. So first thing, again, spell check, all the tech checks, all that stuff. Read aloud, essential. If somebody's listening, awesome. If they're not, no big deal. You will hear it. Oh, also, a tip from the group was, if you don't want to read aloud yourself, another tech tool available to us is that many of our programs will dictate our text. So you can actually have your computer read to you. And that really could take you out of it completely, and you could just be listening, and you will hear so many of the things that you want to change, the things that don't necessarily hit the way you want them to hit. So this is a very simple thing to do. And then the final thing that I do before I click send on anything is I do a formatting check. And that's really just basic stuff, like is my spacing right? Is my font, consistent? I used to have issues when I was first using Scrivener, and I was compiling the docs to come out of Scrivener. Somehow my fonts were all janky. I would have like one section in one font and another section in another font. What a hot mess. So it's a thing that I'm always looking for. Like, do I have the same font going through? Is it the same size? Is my spacing correct? Is my dialogue formatted correctly? Do I have the right types of quotes and italics when I want them? But particularly when sending and submitting work to a place where I want to be published, or I'm in a contest, does my formatting agree with the formatting that they requested? These are just the beginnings of what I'm calling the secret knock on the door of getting your work out into the world. Because what is going to happen if you don't run your work through some basic editing, copy editing, whatever you want to call it, the second you try to get in the door, that door will be shut. That door will be shut. If you submit a work or send the work out with glaring spelling errors all over, chances are it's not going to be looked at once you get past, a paragraph or two. If you even get a full paragraph of eyes, in something like that. I just feel like these are things that are going to take you out of a potential opportunity, not because you don't have the skill to do it, but just because you may not have taken the time. So writing is a multifaceted field. I mean, we get this. It's a creative endeavor, and storytelling is an art of its own. And the story that you can create and the story that you can write is so uniquely your own that there is no one else that can tell your story the way you can tell your story. No one can ever take that away from you. However, it is possible that your story will not be seen if you don't have the secret knock, if you don't follow some of the basic rules. And the thing about rules that I love, rules that are like black and white, like is this spelled right or not, is that they're kind of brainless, right? And so this is why I always want to take them out of my creation process, because I can spend a long time sort of worrying about them, or while I'm trying to create. I can have them interrupt me over and over again while I'm trying to create. Or I can push it all off to the side and just be a mindless drone about it. Just be like, did I spell that right? Did I spell that right? Did I spell that right? I mean, I'll tell you right now that even my son's class, they're first graders and they're practicing writing pretty intensely for first graders as far as I'm concerned. They've been doing every type of writing, narrative writing, storytelling, all about you and everything. And the rhythm is the same. His teacher runs them through writing your story. Just write your story, break it down. They always have to do like 3 pages. And then at the end of you finish your whole story, only totally after, she'll say, now let's look back at what she calls the COPS: capitals, organization, punctuation, and spelling. All that editing stuff is the last thing before submitting, not in the middle. She's not asking the kids to stop while they're writing to see if they're spelling all their words correctly, because it'll stop them completely. And it's a really hyper-focused look at the creation process, because you can understand how a 6 or 7-year-old would be stopped completely if they wanted to talk about something beautiful but couldn't figure out how to spell the word beautiful. And you would give them that liberty. Like, just write it down the way it makes sense to you. Just go and tell the rest of your story, and we'll look it up later. But oftentimes, we ourselves, because we're professionals, right, and we're grown-ups, we say, well, I should know how to spell that. I don't want to have that mistake there. I think let it roll, do whatever you have to do, but don't submit until you check it. That's the professional aspect. That moment of saying, I know that if I need to know how to spell a word, I know how to look it up. I know how to check it. I know how to fix it. There's no reason why it should still be there when the doc goes out. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. That is what we were talking about, and we've been putting together a list of other things to sort of to find and look at. Words like decided, big one for me. I should say, I think I'm over it, but a big one that I still look for when I'm critiquing people is the word suddenly, because it was such a crutch for me for so long. Somehow. I told you already about looking for the word was. Definitely making sure you're formatted, your dialogue is formatted, that you don't have too many sentence fragments, right? We use these things. You're permitted to do that every now and again. It's a stylistic choice, right? But if you overdo it, the question becomes, do you know how to write a complete sentence? And what does it do for the reader if you continually write in that rhythm all the way through? Yeah, I mean, you could be saying something about your narrator, and that's a completely different discussion. You see, this is what happens to me. But I think you get the idea. If you're not doing it intentionally, make sure you're not doing something that you did not choose to do in the first place. So, yeah, there's so many things. And one thing that I wanted to point out this week is that while you can, and you probably do, have your own cheat sheet of things that your checklist before you go send things out, while you can create that on your own, sitting in community, sitting with a group of writers and saying, what is the thing that you check for before you send? What is the thing that to look for every single time you finish a piece? Crowdsource it. Get a group of writers and ask everybody in the room, what's your thing? What's your thing? And then you will have a more robust checklist, and your work will shine even brighter. I mean, this is yet again another reason why you should be not writing alone anymore. because there is such power in writing community. So, yeah, I want you to have a wonderful week. Happy writing. I will be on the NV Rivera YouTube channel again this Friday, sharing another writing exercise with you. But if you are interested in joining me for a writing prompt party that will air on the YouTube channel, then make sure you sign up for the Friday Night Writes email list in the show description, because the next time that we'll be meeting is not this Friday, but next Friday. So that is June, let me check my calendar, June 25th. And it's typically at 7 p.m., I think. I'm not sure. Check the email. You will get the link. You will get the time. You will get the invite. Yeah, it's a wonderful exercise if you haven't done the writing prompt party before, because it really does let your storytelling shine. It's an opportunity for you to write freely under, just a prompt. You write, you read aloud, and then you get to see like what an amazing storyteller you are. And then you can go back and run it through your checklist and say, well, nobody knew because I read it aloud, but I did spell all these things wrong, and my formatting is, needs to be fixed. But I know that the heart of this story was something that went over really well in the group. This is why I love writing prompt parties, because you get to really let your storyteller shine without all the shackles of the secret knock. We get to hear your story from you, how you hear it, how you want to express it, and you get the response from us, and then you get to go back and polish it up and do whatever it is you want to do with that story. Where will that story live? I don't know, but some people have taken their writing prompt party stories and submitted them. Some have been published. It's been really cool and lots of fun. Yeah, that's it. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you, as always, for listening. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Stop Writing Alone podcast wherever you're listening to this episode today. Then connect with us on Facebook at Stop Writing Alone Facebook page, or in the Stop Writing Alone with Nicole Rivera Facebook group. Check Instagram or Twitter, where I'm at NV_Rivera, to find links to our email newsletter.